I would like to call to order over the very loud clock, the February meeting of the Kingston Public Library Board of Trustees. In attendance this evening, we have trustees Lee Lewis, Ralph Caldwell, Matthew Donahue, Jen Crooker, Carolyn Bromwich, and myself, Emily Curtin. We also have Library Director Donald Colon. We are starting off this evening's meetings with minutes approval from last month. They were sent out to trustees to look over. Are there any edits or additions? Not seeing any, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I move to accept the minutes from the January 27th meeting as accepted, as presented.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. The first thing we're going to look at this evening, and I actually have hard copies of it, but it's the budget update that Donald provided for us. I don't know if anyone needs the hard copy, but I'll send it around. It's attached to the building use policy, so.
Thank you.
The reason that Donald and I decided to bring this to the meeting is because in conversations with groups in town, it was revealed that individuals maybe didn't fully understand the budget of the library. And so Donald had made almost like this cheat sheet of sorts for people that were serving on FinCom. And I thought it would be great to bring it here to the library so you could have a copy of it as well, just in case anyone ever asked you about the particulars of the budget, or if you were curious about them yourself. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions or just wanted Donald to walk through it briefly so that we would have it in our back pocket if someone ever approached us about the budget. Would you like to talk about it, Donald?
Sure, I will talk about it. All right. So listed above with the 01610 number, those are all the individual accounts that's voted for at town meeting. So when you see the library's line item as part of the town budget, these are the individual accounts that make up that, that total number. The two top accounts refer to salaries. Basically, it's the professional non-union salary is wage and personnel, and then the clerical union salaries is the next one. And then the next couple of lines are payouts as part of benefits, longevity. So folks who have been here over a certain period of time receive a stipend for that. And then we have sick leave buyback, which isn't, what that is for union members can accrue a certain amount of time for their sick time. And if they accrue more than that, annually, the town buys back that time at a fraction of the cost. And at this point, I think we only have 3 employees out of, the 10 library employees that actually are eligible for that. And then we just have basic, office equipment, repairs and maintenance, printing, for example, with the, we have leased machines, but over a certain amount, we have to pay for, toner usage off of the, the actual copy, the printers that we have. The property repairs is, that was actually a couple of years ago, that was the account that had the money for the putting up and taking down of the tent that we used in the lawn. However, since we haven't been using that for a couple of years, we attempted to zero it out in order to balance the budget last year. But the town accountant had left some funds in there. It was $200 to cover the water bills that the library is now responsible for. It basically is water and sewer that we're now responsible. So it was an increase. So it went from 200 to 2,000. Basically, the first bill that we got for Adams and the library for the water bill ate up the $200. And at this point, we haven't gotten a sewer bill, so we're not sure where that will, lie. And then we have postage for, overdue notices, reminder notices, which is, that is, I think, at like $350. That is very minimal with, all the email notices that we have, as well as the automatic renewals, that cost has drastically decreased. Then we have the program budget, which is 2,500. That was, added to the library budget just a couple of years ago. Then the office supplies, it's general office supplies for 8 internal departments. The big one, which is the books and periodicals, which funds, both physical and digital, like ebooks, as well as some databases. So, for example, the Consumer Report database. Basically that's the online version of the print, version. So we're able to, utilize that funds for that, as well as a portion of the funds, which is actually 10% of the overall books and materials budget, can be used for direct use technology for patrons, meaning that, if we needed to buy new computers, software subscriptions, anything like that, we can actually use that as, the funding source for that. Other supplies refers to processing materials as it relates to, print books and things, labels, book covers, non-general office supplies, things beyond Post-it notes and paper clips and stuff. Software subscription is for services like our online calendar events, the, Assabet, for the museum passes as well, and other various software subscriptions that we have. Annual dues and memberships, that specifically refers to the OCLN annual assessment. And then the copier lease is the contracted amount that we have for the lease of the staff copier. The public copier is provided to us by the vendor with the agreement that they keep the funds that are generated from that. Did anybody have any questions concerning the general fund accounts? Okay, so then the next thing I did was I added the requirements pertaining to state aid, for, being certified for, receiving of state aid, meeting the MAR, how the MAR is calculated, as well as meeting the minimum standards of free public library service. As the number of hours were open, the education level of the director, the materials expenditure, completing an ARIS report annually, and other, compliance factors there. Then what I did was, because at the finance committee that I attended recently, there was a comment made about having, funding, this cut that we have, for fiscal 26, that it be offset by the foundation. So after that comment was made, the chair of the finance committee and myself jumped in real quick to explain that, this funding wasn't meant for operations. It basically is above and beyond to supplement, projects and things like that. So with that said, and with the comment being made that, that there wasn't support to restore the budget, as I requested, due to the fact that they did not understand our accounts, I felt the need to create this document and explain each of these other, funding. And, and they really, like, some of the folks that were talking about it was basically for transparency, which, we have nothing to hide and so forth. So I, listed state aid funding and how it was, calculated. We recently received the first payment for the year, which was a little over $20,000. And so we'll receive another payment sometime within the fiscal year. The next is for funding sources, the Kingston Public Library Foundation, that provides support to the library on an as-needed basis. They pay for special projects, some capital things, that, assist in, the library, being a center of activity for the community. Neither the library director nor the library trustees have oversight over these funds, and support is not always guaranteed. We can make asks at times, and there may be concerns of with the certain financial climate, whether or not an expenditure of a certain amount might be too much or what have you. But it was important that for those that were getting this outside of this group, that they be aware that there is an oversight internally here about that. The Friends of the Kingston Public Library, they provide funds for library programming, summer reading prizes, or in the past, they have also purchased museum passes. I also included gifts, which are financial donations or gifts are generally processed through the foundation. However, at times the library receives donations, and the donations many times come with restrictions and guidelines. And so I wanted folks to be aware of that as well. So there isn't always an assumption of, recently, the Board of Trustees, the Board of Selectmen meeting that's going to be held, that they'll be accepting the, funds from the foundation, for example, to do the winterizing of the LED sign. And, by putting in specifically that that's what the money went for, that would be the same thing if somebody says, I want to make this donation, but it's for children's books, children's DVDs, or what have you. Does anyone have any questions about the external funding sources?
I just have one question. On the financial donations currently, are there any limitations or terms about, do we require any special name limitations on donations, or does the donor in fact have the right to apply limitations to whatever they want?
So we can refuse donations that come in with restrictions that we feel that we could not fulfill that request. Obviously, if somebody came and said, here, in somebody's will, somebody left us $100,000 and you need to buy, VHS tapes, or that it specifically had to be on a specific topic, but they need it for whatever financial reasons, they need it to be spent within a period of time. We can, refuse that. Generally, if there is a donation that's come with a, restriction or an ask, it is usually something that would work within our parameters for collection development, so it wouldn't be a challenge.
Okay. I'm thinking about things like a significant donation that is requires it for the children books, or the book. Does that say you can do that, but the limitation would say no?
No, there wouldn't be a limitation like that, because it would be a general broad restriction or ask of them. But if it was, I guess, more specific on, if there was, for example, like I said, with the VHS tapes, my point with that was saying that if they want to be an investment on something that was like outdated media, that, we were phasing out. And, and folks, there was still some folks that like VHS, that they would say, hey, I want you to use it. I mean, somebody could have put it in their will 20 years ago, or whatever it was, that VHS tapes were still
Or a
around.
microfiche machine.
Oh, exactly, exactly, anything like that. So, we've kind of played it with that. We can refuse donations that come with, I guess, unrealistic restrictions, but a donation in which if someone said, oh, we want to make a donation to the, children's department, and if it's very broad, obviously, we could use it for materials, we could use it for capital. If it's specifically materials, that is a benefit as well. And we would take that opportunity to invest in maybe higher end materials like Wonder Books, which are much more expensive children's books because it has like a built-in audio player and stuff like that.
And all of that is in writing.
It is in our gift policy.
Okay. I think people should be aware of that because it's extremely important. Like the very $60,000 that was given to us by a donor. And it was just given to the library. There was no limitations. So consequently, it would be important for us to know that that kind of donation is always going to be in writing. Because otherwise, these idiots will try to get rid of the money. And I'm just concerned about that. Hey, look, I've lived here for over 30 years. I know the people that live, what happens to the people that live in this state or in this city. I'm sorry, I didn't have my nap. I'm not speaking as clearly as I normally do.
Well, I thought it was important we have this only because if someone does approach us about how the budget is broken down, because it seems there was some confusion about what responsibilities different entities have, what responsibilities they can even have at all, because I think the suggestion that was made at FinCom obviously illustrated that they didn't understand that municipal responsibilities are municipal responsibilities.
Absolutely.
So if there are no questions on this, the digital copy that you all have is not cut off the way the printed copy is, so you can have the full sentence. Next on the agenda is the Adams Center use policy. For those of us who have been around for years, welcome back. The Adams Center building use policy. I know Ralph, Deb, myself, Carolyn, we've looked at it many times and here we are again. Who can believe? If the hard copy is attached in your packet, if you need it. Is there a specific area of this policy, Donald, that you want us to zero in on this evening?
So the reason why I asked was that, as basically when I first came in 2021, the trustees was working on this policy, and in 2022 it was finalized. And after living with the policy for a couple of years and then revisiting it, there were just some contradictions within the policy. For example, there's one line that says that the space is available during library hours of operations, but then they go on to saying in another area, which is the chart that shows the fees, 8 a.m., which we're not here at 8 a.m., nor are we here on Sundays, and things like that. But also, what has been a big challenge is that we have one archivist, and the requests for space, it's kind of one of those things about that it's either feast or famine with asks. And, overall, there haven't been a lot of asks per se, but they tend to be on evenings that either the library isn't open, the library, the archivist isn't working that day, or there's some type of other scheduling conflict, i.e., he's needed over here to cover reference because someone's out that day. So what I did was I did go through the policy and I spoke to him, I spoke to Nick about, just some of the things. so what I wanted to do was basically go over some of the big general things, just some things are just clarification. For example, that if you look at the purpose and it talks about the, the preference for, reserving the space, on page 1 under 2 purpose. The question I have is, is there actually bumping rights? So say a member of the general public requests space at the Adams Center on a certain day, but then a Kingston Town activity is scheduled the same day and they want to reserve the space. Do they have bumping rights, or is it done on a first come, first serve basis? So for me, that was a clarification point. And then as far as, for example, the reservations. So on page 2, number 3, it's actually the last paragraph. Reservations will be accepted for only 2 events at a time. When an exception is granted, the library director will notify the applicant. Exceptions are granted for a period of 12 months, after which time a new request must be submitted in writing. So generally, the library programs are reserved 4 to 5 months out. So I am concerned about that part of it, because recently we did have a group ask about getting the Adams Center every month. And I just don't know if that is actually something that is sustainable.
So where it says exceptions are granted for a period of 12 months, so that they could say they want it Monday nights for a year.
The first Monday
for the year.
For the year.
But since we only do our programming about 4 months out.
Correct.
We
So
would just have to make that exception period.
I would
shorter.
so what I would like to do is I would actually like to say that for 60 days, because things will come up.
Okay.
So it's
So go from 12 months to 60 days.
correct.
Holy smokes.
Well, that's the thing. There are quite a few little things, as I have everything highlighted.
Just a point of clarification in case people were unaware. The archivist office and the archives are housed in the Adams Center. So when Director Colon is saying we only have 1 archivist, and when the archivist is not there, that means the space is unattended. Or if the archivist has to come here for coverage here, that leaves the space unattended, which is why, even though, yes, we've been lucky enough since this was developed to hire an amazing archivist and have him in-house, he isn't 24/7 in the center available to monitor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then fees on page 3. Weekdays 8 a.m. to closure, Saturdays and Sundays. Obviously, we're not.
So the copy I have just says Saturdays, no Sundays.
Okay.
So I think that was already taken care of. So you would say weekdays 10, right, to closure? Since that's
Correct.
only open. At 8. Now we were ambitious.
Yes, early birds. And then on page 4, so like I said, there's a lot of little things, but for example, on page 4, under number 2 and number 7, they basically they refer to picking up the keys and returning of the keys, which we don't pass out the keys.
So they're let in on the keypad, right? Or they're physically let in by an individual in the Adams Center.
Correct.
So they do no accessing of
Correct.
the space. This is outdated at this point.
Correct.
So they still have to schedule access, but the access no longer involves picking up the key from the staff contact.
Correct.
Because what was that when it wasn't, if people were using it outside of typical hours?
Yeah,
But
there was
now
a
we
time when
restricted
people
it.
had keys to the library and the Adams Center for their monthly nighttime
Gotcha.
meetings.
Interesting. So now, at least for the Adams Center, we're only offering that space when
There
during
can be,
regular
right,
hours.
Correct.
an accompanying
Gotcha.
library.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to.
Correct.
So the authorized representatives will schedule access to the building for the event. It's really just all you have to say in terms of, because they're just gonna have to set up the meet
Correct.
time. And while we're at it, going back to that front page under purpose, when you were talking about bumping rights, the way that it's worded, finally, preference in scheduling is given to Kingston-based groups and individuals, then to the general public. I don't foresee. I mean, if something was already scheduled by a Kingston-based group, then even if it was another Kingston-based group, you would still say that the space is taken for that time, so it's unavailable. So I don't think the general public would ever bump a Kingston-based group. And on the flip, I think it would be weird if someone from the general public had it reserved and then we, for whatever reason, wanted to use it. I can't imagine that it would be.
Yeah,
good,
it feels
but
like once
it-
it's scheduled.
Once it's scheduled, it's scheduled. So I don't
Okay.
think, I think that's, I mean, that's what we're hashing this out for, right? If someone does schedule it, then it's not like we can be like, oh, but we want to have Mama Steph there.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, and now that
right.
it's
Fair
scheduling,
is fair thing. wasn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
so the first come, first
like once
served.
you've gone through the process and you've signed all the documents and you know you're gonna meet there to have your thing, I don't think we can suddenly say like, oh, Kingston bird watchers, they need it, so they're in, you're out.
Yeah, so some language should be about first come, first served.
So finally preferences.
Well, especially because now that they can only reserve 2 events at a time. And any exception to that's only 60 days. It's not like.
I don't think
someone's
we'll have a
booking
lot of-
something
yeah.
a year,
Yeah.
2 years in advance,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you realize, yeah.
I don't think this is gonna devolve to a fist fight over that.
Oh, this-
All right, so beyond, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, so authorized residents will schedule access to the building, and then beyond that,
Well, even, it's funny, like rereading this, I see things that I don't, didn't notice before, but complete the attendance form.
I just crossed it out.
Yeah,
Because I believe the attendance form, it's a separate document, it was a separate document. When you were requesting use of space, they used to have you write down like number of children, number of adults, how many people are gonna be in there and, or you anticipated being in there. So for instance, like when my Girl Scout troop was in what used to be the kitchen off the children's room, I had to say there's 15 girls, 2 haggard leaders in there with them. And then that was like our attendance form that we would turn in. So I don't even think that we have that sort of
no,
documentation anymore.
no. Well, that's the thing too, is that I think some of the language I've seen definitely came from other sources. That there was like.
It's
an
just
overall-
outdated practice
Yeah.
that they don't, it doesn't exist
Well, it
anymore.
seems like if you were giving the key and somebody was like letting in and letting out, then maybe knowing who was in the building
Yeah.
might matter, but now that it's only when there's.
Now there's like
that
personnel
person.
present, it's a little bit.
Yeah. And on page 2,
And then
um,
just interrupt, it seems
sure.
like then on number 5 and 6 in that same before the event, it has them like locking the door and completing an attendance form and the
Correct.
turning key, like all that. Go to.
yeah, yeah.
We don't give it to them, we
Projector
can't get it.
authorizing who then requesting the list, schedule projector training meeting.
Yeah, lock the door. Mhm.
But also, so on page 2, before the event, telephone or visit staff at the library circulation desk. You don't do anything with the space reservation, and check the library calendar for available dates and times. An appropriate meeting room. Those, we don't put non-library events on our calendar of events. So it would just be a basic request to the library director for reserving the space. Because many times, like with this particular group that literally wanted it on a Monday night, we couldn't do Monday night, because obviously we're not open Monday nights, and then they want to switch it to a Wednesday, but there was actually a program scheduled for that Wednesday night. So they're asking for another Wednesday night. So I'm shifting my schedule to cover that so that they can hold it for that month. You know, so we, even though somebody may come in with a request for a certain day, we try to be flexible and, try to, if that night doesn't work, maybe we can work this night out. So I wouldn't
So
want,
do you want A struck from the document and make B A and go from there? Where it says before the event, telephone or visit the staff at the library circulation desk.
so I want that to be omitted.
Yep, so that's struck, and then B becomes A, and so on.
Well,
I
we don't
mean-
put the events on the calendar.
But you don't, but you put your own, I was reading it as, you look at the library calendar, see if there are library events in the space. So at least you'll know if there's already like Kingston Public Library events over there.
Like a speaker or something.
Right,
Right, but if somebody's looking for a Tuesday evening at 6, the calendar may say that the library doesn't have something, but they may not know that the Girl Scouts are already meeting there. But if,
oh yeah, they'll still have to check. but
so
they
as
can at
a
least-
one-all,
Yeah, they can at
cons-
least see for the library events.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking,
Okay.
like, before you even ask. That's how I was reading it.
I feel like though B makes it sound like if you're checking the library calendar for available dates, that somehow you'd be able to figure it out. Like, whereas you can't
You're
figure out
gonna
if it's
assume that it's
available.
available. but
Right.
They don't.
Like, we could say maybe check the library calendar for
Library
Library
events.
specific
library,
events,
like already
So,
scheduled library events.
library
Yeah.
specific events, and then knowing that beyond that,
Yeah.
you're still gonna have to make the request and find out. Oh, and I'm noticing on page 3 that the Sunday is listed underneath the chart, even though the chart just says Saturdays, it says
Mhm.
Saturdays and Sundays, so just cross out and Sunday.
And I wasn't sure too, that under that under that same section, the last section before building use, however, the authorized may collect dues and or the cost for refreshments, if we really wanted to have any type of money exchange there.
The last time that we had an event that had refreshments over there. Yeah, maybe.
Like an authorized representative of whom would collect dues.
Organization.
I think it's date. Yeah, I mean, if it was an entity that, if it was a group that had a treasurer, that would be, the treasurer
Or
would
a
be,
designated coordinator for that.
exactly,
specific
they'd be the
event.
one who
Or
would,
members in particular who just shaking other members.
yeah.
Unless they just have to just go away and say no admission fees can be charged or money collected without approval by the director. So that it's something where they do, everyone's Venmoing $10 pizza, you just be like, yeah, that's fine.
So from however on,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it feels like, I mean, especially I'm looking at the cost of renting this space, it's so low that it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like places should generally be charging people to go.
Yeah.
Making a profit off of the nonprofit.
Are we sticking with our very stern cancellation policy where they have to come before the board if it happens twice?
I had to,
Appropriate cancellation.
The disciplinarian entity is like, great idea, actually adults be responsible about that. The kind of side of me kind of doubts.
Awkward.
So I think that was pretty much
The main.
it. Yeah.
So
I mean-
I was keeping track of the omissions and the edits, so I can add them to the document and then bring it back. As we begin our cycle. Looking over policies week after week, I'll bring it back and we can make sure all the edits are present and
Okay.
accept them for moving forward.
Mhm.
And do you feel that there is a flurry of activity right now for people looking for the item center, or is this just preemptive?
It's just in the moment, there has been a lot of, I'd probably say like in the last month, there's been a lot of inquiries, both in appropriate and inappropriate, i.e. baby showers,
Right.
sort of thing, requests for the use of the space. So that, that has been a main, kind of sticking point is that a lot of locals knew that in the past you were able to do it, but now you can't. So there's that, and as well as, trying to stay within the operating hours for some that, that can prove to be a challenge if it's a later evening event. So someone trying to, have a meeting at 7 o'clock, they may not be able to get done by 8, and we need, more time than that. So, but I think this is a good step in, reworking the policy so that it, can work well both for us for sustainability of providing the space, but giving folks the opportunity to be able to utilize the space.
I'd like to know what kind of venues the baby shower checked in with us.
That's because
I wasn't here.
before it came back to the library, it was run by the selectmen.
My friend's sister got married there.
And the selectmen really had no limitations on it.
Yeah.
However, when the library was given to the state, the building was done by the Adams people, family. They required a court issue on the building. Why the language this is now reads. Groups and individuals of educational, civic, cultural, philanthropic, community, and similar purposes.
Included in the information that went out to you this week was Director Cologne's report. Did anyone have any questions or concerns about that as presented?
About his report?
Yes.
Oh, I just have 2 areas, and they're obviously talking about the finances. I noticed that in the finance committee, when they made the vote, they voted down the proposal for the budget on a 3-3 vote, which meant to me that in selectmen, there's a possibility that we could get that to change it. We could get another individual committee to vote in favor of it. Because that's all you need is 4, right?
That is correct. That is correct. So when the vote, there was discussion to restore the 25,000 to the budget, and then a vote was taken, and it ended with the 3-3, and it was after the vote was taken that it was shared that the reason why one of them voted no was because they didn't understand the accounts. So that was part of why I created the the handout that I had described earlier, in hopes that it would bring up some dialogue and better understanding. At this point with the budget, I did have a brief conversation with the town administrator and had asked about the restoration of the account, of the money in the account, and at this point, it would be an ask for the Board of Selectmen. However, they, have made, the initial, pass over the budget as is. So, I mean, it is something that, we can still, do. I mean, there are obviously other town departments that are cut. We just happen to be cut at the amount that we're cut at. So I don't believe that finance would retake a vote. And all that would do would be, it would just be their presentation for the library budget.
Well, when you, if one member, as you noted, that they didn't understand what the operations are. Have you taken any attempt to take them individual, even privately, to getting this to them?
So what I did was I sent it to the chair of the finance committee, because that is the only communication I only have his email address. So I had sent it, I had seen him at a Board of Selectmen meeting. I explained to him that I had sent him that, and I just wanted to make sure he had it, which luckily it turned out that he hadn't received it because he uses his full name, including middle initial, which the middle initial was left out of the email that was sent to us to communicate with him. So I was able to resend it. And after, meeting with him and talking to him, I don't know if there was further discussion amongst the committee about that handout. It was brought up in a department head meeting that for the departments that have more complicated budgets as we do, that something like this would probably be necessary to present every year versus a department that only has like a department head and a single admin in them and not have the nuances that we have. So I'm not sure at this point, because it was just the other day that I had seen him and sent it to him. So I haven't gotten any feedback back concerning it.
Well, I think it's worth contacting him and finding out.
And
I
we
really
had
do.
spoken as well about moving forward, if perhaps it would be best if Director Cologne presented to the entire finance committee a more detailed rundown of the budget, the way things have been done in the past, rather than having a single point person come in and get the information and bring it back to the finance committee. Because then things like this misunderstanding would be less likely to occur.
Absolutely,
Now,
absolutely.
your meeting, the Board of Selectmen is meeting tomorrow
Correct.
to go over their budget. Has this been sent to them?
It was shared with the town administrator, so I don't.
Have you sent it to the chairman of the select?
I have not sent it to the chairman of the
Then
selectmen.
please do it
Okay,
tonight, so that tomorrow morning it is in his office by tomorrow morning. He's a fucking idiot. I swear to God he is.
Well, we're not gonna comment on other leadership in town, but I'm sure that Director Cologne can send the information on to the rest of the select. board.
absolutely.
In addition to Donald's report, there were staff reports sent out. I don't know if anyone had any commentary or things that they wanted to mention about the staff reports. Not seeing any, there's no update from the foundation or Friends this month, and there's no bills, thankfully. Under old business, does anyone have any old business? I will mention under old business that we have the date of the 24th of March for our next meeting.
I'm sorry, the date.
24th of March, Monday. So as long as that's still okay with everyone, that's what we're going to post moving forward. Any new business?
to adjourn the meeting at 6:59.
And I'll second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are
Aye.
officially adjourned.